Hi there and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann and today we're doing a partial embossing technique with WOW embossing powders. Partial embossing is just where you heat emboss portions of your stamped image. So you can see here on this bumblebee collage only the bumblebee and a little bit of the word bee, and the bottom portion here has been heat embossed. You'll also notice that I've painted this in, and I'll show you that process as well. I'll also show you how I created the spattered and embossed background on my card too. So all really easy techniques to do, so let's take a look. First of all, I'm going to grab my stamp set for this card, and in this case I'm using the Eclectica ESN21 stamp set, and I'm going to be working with the bumblebee collage down at the bottom, although I have to say this technique also works really beautifully for the dragonfly up here at the top, so keep that in mind too. Now for this technique I'm going to be working with my Misty. And this is a stamp positioner. You don't have to have the Misty for this, but I really find that I'm relying on my Misty more and more as I'm stamping. So all I need to do is open this up. I'm going to pop down a piece of the PaperArtsy Smoothie cardstock. So this is a nice, smooth, heavyweight cardstock that's going to work beautifully for this. And get my magnets in place here. And then I can take my stamp and then simply position it down here onto my cardstock. And I'm just going to place this with the rubber side facing down, close up my Misty, and then when I open this again, you can see that the stamp is actually clinging onto the opposite side. And this is where I can also kind of make sure that I've got it positioned exactly where I want it to be. Now for heat embossing, of course, you know you need to have your embossing powders and your inks on hand. Normally, when you're doing heat embossing, you might think to use your embossing ink pads, which you can, but in this case, I'm going to be working with some colored pigment ink. And these are from Colorbox. These are the Ann Butler range. And I'm going to be working with Ocean Breeze and Blueberry. So the nice thing about pigment ink is that it stays wet for a really long time, which means that you can use it as an embossing powder. It gives you the longevity of the wetness, but it also gives you the color too. So that's another nice benefit for that. So I'm going to be working with both of these colors. Now I also have a folded piece of scrap paper on hand that's going to catch my excess embossing powder. And my embossing powder is from WOW. This is the Gold Pearl, and this is what is going to add my color and shine. Now when I'm working with my partial embossing technique, I know I want to get embossing powder only on certain areas of my stamped motif. So in this case, I need to have a little spoon or something, and rather than using a plastic spoon, which can introduce static to your embossing powder, I've got a little bit of a crafting hack here. I didn't have a spoon that was small enough to get into the mouth of the jar, so I'm just using this metal bottle opener with a little piece of tape to cover up the hole that's on the end. So this is going to be my makeshift spoon. So I've got all of those elements in place. I can get ready to do my stamping. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, and this is the Ocean Breeze. And I'm just going to ink up my stamp with this. You can see how beautiful that color is. Then I'll come back with the Blueberry, which is a darker shade, and just add some areas of that darker color on here. And then all I need to do is just simply close up my Misty, and you can see how easily this comes about. Now if I find that when I stamp this I open it and I don't have a perfect impression, I can just re-ink and go back and do it again. But I really like how that has come out. So what I'll do now is just take this out of my Misty, and I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to bring in my embossing powder. Now I need to work pretty quickly, of course, while that ink is still wet. So I'm going to grab the gold powder and also my fake spoon, and I'm just going to get a little bit of the powder in here because I know that I want the powder just to go where the bee's body is and his wings, or her wings. So I'm just going to gently tap this on here to make sure that I'm getting it exactly where I want it to go. Now I also might want a little bit down here on that bottom portion of the collage too, and maybe just a little bit up here too. It's kind of nice to have just spot areas of that embossing powder. So you can see I don't have it completely covered, just in certain areas. And then what I'll do is just tap this off, and you can see that I've got those spot areas on here where I want it to go. And then I can use my folded piece of paper, of course, to funnel the embossing powder back into the jar. But for now, I'm going to leave that in the paper, and I'm going to come in and heat set this. Okay, so now my partially embossed image has been partially embossed, and I just love the effect of this and how it gives you such a different look. Now the other thing I have going on my background of my original card is kind of a spattering effect in the back. So let me show you this again. You can see that a really pretty fine spattered look on here. Well, this has been heat embossed as well. So in this case, what I'm going to do is grab some yellow pigment ink, and this is again the color box. This is in Sunshine. And what I'll do is just squash a little bit of this right onto my craft sheet. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water in here. And I'll bring in my water brush. You can use a paintbrush if you want to too. Now if you want to, you can mask off this area here that you've already stamped, but I think it's fine if you don't. So it just depends on what you would like. And I'm just going to spatter this wet ink on here. And then, let me kind of clean this up here. Then I'm going to bring back in my catch-all paper and my embossing powder. Now you could use the spoon for this or not, just kind of depends on what you prefer. And I'll just add some embossing powder, same color, that beautiful gold. I'll just add that around on here. And then once again, tap off the excess, and you can see where I've got some of that beautiful powder on here. Now all I need to do once again is heat set, and I'll have a really nice background. All right, so my embossing powder has been heat set, and I have a really fun and pretty background. Now the other thing you can do, you can leave your bumblebee as it is, but I decided to paint mine in. And I'm using the Ann Butler Iridescence for this, and this is in Sunshine. And this is just a really pretty pearlized iridescent medium. And it's going to be just perfect for coloring in my bumblebee. So I'm just going to get a little bit out of the pot here. I don't need to have a whole lot. And add a little bit of water. And then just take that same water brush, or you can use your paintbrush if you want to, and color in the bee's body and wings. Now you can add other colors in here too if you want to. I just wanted to have that yellow just to contrast with the blue, but also just to give a little bit of additional shine with that beautiful iridescent. So you can see how pretty that looks. And this will dry very, very quickly, and then I am ready to go with the rest of my card. So I'm going to quickly clean up some of this medium on here from my craft sheet and bring back in my original card. And I can show you once again what I've done to put this all together. So just simply taken the stamped and embossed image, and I've added a little bit more embossing around the edges here, mounted this up onto some cardstock and then pattern paper. Now around the outside edges of my card blank, I've also done some of the gold embossing. Now I did also do this same motif using different ink colors, and in this case I was also using some of the Crafters pigment inks, and this is in Tangelo and Canyon. So you can see how you can get some really different effects just depending on which inks you are using as your embossing inks. And of course you can do the same technique using embossing ink as well. So this is how you can do a beautiful partial embossing effect on your cards. Thank you so much for joining me today on Studio SN. If you enjoyed today's video, please subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with the very latest stamping and card making videos. In the meantime, you can learn more about paper crafting techniques on my website, saranaumann.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.